So, back in October of 2025, this interstellar object named 3I/Atlas zipped through our solar system, and it totally captivated and terrified pretty much everyone. But here's the thing. The official story and the pictures they gave us, they kicked off this massive firestorm of controversy. And now, a lot of people are thinking there's way more going on here than we're being told.
Okay, let's just dive right into it, because this is the question at the heart of everything. Are we looking at a kind of weird comet? Or is something really significant being hidden from us on purpose? The whole controversy, all the suspicion, it all started with one single, profoundly disappointing photograph.
For months, the hype was absolutely real. I mean, you had 4 space agencies, 7 different spacecraft, all getting into position to get the shot of a lifetime. Scientists were promising us clarity, answers. And what did we get? Well, we got this.
I mean, just look at this. The difference is absolutely staggering, right? On the left, that's the multi-billion-dollar European Space Agency's best shot, a fuzzy white blob. On the right, you've got this beautiful, crisp image of a different comet, and it was captured by an amateur with a basic camera. So you can imagine the public reaction. Well, to put it mildly, people were not happy.
The backlash was just immediate and totally savage. People were furious. And this quote from social media just perfectly captures that vibe, that feeling of being let down. Why build up all this excitement just to hand us something that tells us absolutely nothing new?
So, the official excuse is that the camera just wasn't built for this kind of work. It's designed to take pictures of the bright surface of Mars from just a few hundred kilometers up, not some faint object that's tens of thousands of times dimmer and millions of kilometers away. And, that's a fair point. But it just raises an even bigger question. Why hype up the release at all? And more importantly, where are the good pictures?
Okay, so let's move on to the next piece of this puzzle, because you'll see how this all starts to build. The frustration over the bad photo pretty quickly turned into suspicion. And that suspicion was fueled by this deafening silence from the very agencies that could have given us a much, much better look.
And here's the kicker. NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has the HiRISE camera. We're talking about the most powerful camera ever sent to another planet. Its resolution is more than 10 times better than the ESA's. If there were any kind of weird structures on 3I/Atlas, anything artificial, HiRISE would have seen it, no question.
And yet, what did we get from NASA? Nothing. Crickets. They blamed a US government shutdown. But it wasn't just NASA. China's orbiter, suddenly silent. The UAE's orbiter, also silent. So you've got multiple independent space agencies all at the same time, either unable or just unwilling to release their data on the most important object to visit our solar system in years. It's a pattern that's really hard to ignore.
So while the pros were all going quiet, backyard astronomers got to work. And some of them, using some really aggressive digital processing, came up with images that they claimed showed these dark, geometric shapes inside the object's coma, that fuzzy gas cloud around it. Now look, these are super controversial. A lot of experts say it's just digital noise, kind of like seeing faces in the clouds. But it created this wild contrast. Official silence on one hand, and these provocative, even if unproven, amateur sightings on the other. The mystery got way deeper on October 4th. This anonymous post shows up on 4chan, of all places, claiming to be an ESA data leak. Now, normally you just dismiss that out of hand, right? But the level of technical detail in this thing was unsettling. It laid out this whole series of wild anomalies that just didn't fit with the simple, it's just a comet explanation.
The leak really boiled down to 2 major, flat-out impossible things. First, a chemical problem. The object was supposedly spitting out tons of nickel gas, but almost zero iron. In space, nickel and iron are like cosmic twins. They form together, they travel together. Finding one without the other is like finding smoke without a fire. It just doesn't happen. And second, a thermal problem. It was outgassing like crazy, like a comet getting blasted by the sun, but infrared data apparently showed it was staying bizarrely cold. It's like sweating buckets in a freezer.
So, to explain all this physics-defying stuff, the leaker threw out this wild theory that 3I/Atlas might be something called a cue ball. It's a theoretical quantum object that could be huge and have properties that seem totally impossible to us, like spreading heat instantly across its entire structure.
But the strange coincidences just kept piling up. It turns out the direction 3I/Atlas came from lines up almost perfectly with the source of one of the greatest mysteries in modern astronomy, the 1977 WOW signal. Remember that? A crazy powerful, totally unexplained radio blast from deep space that we've never, ever heard again.
The odds of that alignment being a random coincidence? Just 0.6%.
And the connection gets even weirder when you look at the timeline. If you run the clock backwards, it turns out that just 3 days before we detected that famous wow signal back in '77, 3I/Atlas was in that exact same patch of sky. Is it a coincidence? I mean, maybe. But wow, is it a suspicious one?
And then there's its flight path. Interstellar objects, they should just come in from totally random directions, all sorts of crazy angles. But 3I/Atlas? It came in almost perfectly flat, on the same plane as all our planets, with an angle of less than 5 degrees. Statistically, that is, and this is a quote from a physicist, profoundly unlikely. It's like throwing a dart at a globe while you're blindfolded and having it land right on the equator.
So all of these questions, the blurry photo, the total silence, all these weird anomalies, they're all building to this one critical moment. The object is about to get the closest it's going to get to the sun, which is when it'll be most active. But there's a huge problem. We're not going to be able to see it happen.
So here's what's about to go down. On October 29th and 30th, the object is going to pass directly behind the sun from our point of view. Now that's the exact moment when the intense solar heat should be causing the most activity. If it's a comet, it might just break apart. But if it's something else, well, it has the perfect cover. Every single telescope on Earth will be completely blind.
And this is where it gets genuinely chilling. Harvard physicist Avi Loeb, who's been all over this from the start, he just laid out the stakes. He suggests that if this thing is technological, it could use this blind spot to maneuver, or maybe even release probes that could intercept the Earth. He even warned that if it comes back out on a different trajectory, the financial markets could literally crash.
So this is it. This is where we are, just waiting. In early November, 3I/Atlas is supposed to reappear from behind the sun. And when it does, we're going to be facing one of two very, very different realities.
The two possible futures are just incredibly stark. Scenario A, it acts like a normal comet, it comes back out on the path we expect, maybe it's broken up into a few pieces, and the whole mystery is over. It was just a weird rock. But in scenario B, something is different. It emerges, but its path has changed. It shows no signs of falling apart. And in that case, everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe changes in an instant.
And just to add one last layer of frustration to this whole thing, the European Space Agency does have a spacecraft called JUICE that's going to get a good look at it in November after it passes the sun. But because of data processing and communication delays, they've already said we're not going to see that data until February of 2026, so even more waiting.
Which leaves us with this one final, massive question hanging in the air. In just a few short weeks, when this object comes back into view, what are we going to see? Will it be a fizzling out comet that finally puts all these wild theories to rest? Or will its reappearance mark the beginning of a totally new chapter for humanity, one filled with even more terrifying questions? All we can really do is wait and watch the skies.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This week, we are looking at something that's really shifted gears, hasn't it? From just scientific chatter to a full-blown global mystery.
Absolutely. We're talking about the third interstellar visitor, 3I/Atlas.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we get space traffic all the time, right? Comet Lemon, Comet Swan, those little asteroids that just fly by. Predictable stuff.
Boring, almost.
But 3I/Atlas, this is something else entirely.
It really is. It's an anomaly by definition. Since it flew past Mars back in early October 2025, it's got top scientists, especially someone like Avi Loeb at Harvard, actually saying out loud, could this be, not natural?
And that's what we're digging into today. Our sources are, well, they're all over the place. We've got whispers of high-level science leagues, reports about governments maybe coordinating behind the scenes.
It's a lot.
It is. So our job here is to cut through that static and focus on maybe 3 or 4 key things, the statistical anomalies that are making serious people ask these really big questions about where this thing came from.
And the whole situation is kind of defined by this data paradox, isn't it? It's bizarre. The most compelling evidence we seem to have is the evidence that's missing, specifically high-quality data.
Right. What we did get was pretty poor quality. Then there's the silence from multiple countries with probes right there. And honestly, a pretty defensive reaction online from some parts of the scientific community.
Defensive is a good word for it. So let's start there. Section 1. What pictures did we get, And more importantly, what pictures are we not seeing?
Okay, Section 1, Missing Pictures and Coordinated Silence. So October 7th and 8th, these were supposed to be the big days, right? 7 different spacecraft were lined up, ready to get a good look at 3 IATLAs as it zipped past Mars.
And the first thing the public sees comes from ESA, the European Space Agency. And it was, well, let's just say underwhelming.
Underwhelming is generous. It was basically called a fuzzy white dot all over the internet. Images from the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter.
Yeah, but here's the kicker. When you dig into the specs of that camera, releasing that fuzzy dot almost seems stranger than releasing nothing.
Explain that. Why is it strange?
Well, the resolution was terrible for this task. We're talking 340 kilometers per pixel. Now, estimates put the core of 3I Atlas somewhere between, say, 5 and 46 kilometers wide.
So way smaller than a single pixel could resolve.
Exactly. The camera just wasn't built for this. It's designed to look at Mars, which is like 10,000 to 100,000 times brighter than this faint object out in space. It fundamentally couldn't see any detail.
So ESA must have known this wouldn't show anything useful.
Presumably. Which makes you ask, okay, if multiple players decided to keep their good data under wraps, why release the fuzzy stuff? All it did was confirm something was there, but frustrated everyone wanting actual information.
Which leads directly to the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
NASA. Specifically, the HiRISE camera on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. That's the gold standard, right?
Absolutely, that's the crown jewel. HiRISE resolution at that distance had been around 30 kilometers per pixel, more than 10 times better than ESA's shot.
10 times. So if 3I Atlas had any kind of weird shape, any structure, HiRISE should have picked it up.
It really should have. So, where are those pictures?
The official line is the U.S. government shut down, thousands of NASA employees furloughed, work stops.
Okay. But, as you hinted, that explanation starts to feel pretty thin when you look around.
Right. Because China was there with Tianwen-1, the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, they had their HOPE orbiter perfectly positioned too.
And neither of them answer to U.S. budget issues or shutdowns, yet complete silence from Beijing and Abu Dhabi as well.
It stops looking like a bureaucratic glitch in one country.
And starts looking like something else, like maybe deliberate coordination between agencies. That's the uncomfortable implication.
And into that vacuum steps the amateur community. We saw that claim from the Portuguese observer, Dogsonian Power, right? Claiming they caught dark, geometric shapes using a solar telescope.
And what was fascinating there wasn't just the claim, but the reaction. The professional debunking was fast, like almost instant.
Yeah, unusually fast.
Arguments about processing artifacts, pareidolia, seeing shapes and randomness, they were deployed within hours. It felt defensive, like they were trying to shut down that narrative before anyone could even properly check the amateur's work.
Which, of course, just fuels more suspicion. If there's nothing to hide, why the rush to debunk?
Precisely. It creates the opposite effect.
Okay, let's move to Section 2 then. Because beyond the missing pictures, the physics and the stats are where things get really strange. The core anomalies. And we have to mention the 4chan leak.
Right, the infamous 4chan leak. Normally you'd dismiss that out of hand, but this one, well, some specific details in it, things about the object's composition, seemed to line up with later, more credible observations, which made people like Loeb actually pay attention.
So what was the first big problem from that leak, scientifically speaking?
The alleged chemical impossibility. Based on spectroscopy data analyzing the light signature, the leak claimed 3I8 LES was spewing out about 100 kilograms of nickel gas per second.
Okay, 100 kilos a second is a lot of gas. What's the problem?
The problem is it was supposedly releasing all this nickel with almost no detectable iron emission alongside it.
Ah. And nickel and iron in space stuff, they're usually found together, right?
Exactly. They're like inseparable twins in astrophysics. They condense out of gas clouds at almost the same temperature, so they're always mixed together in asteroids, planets, stars, in a pretty standard ratio.
So finding a whole bunch of nickel without the iron is weird.
It's more than weird. It basically violates our understanding of how natural matter behaves in space. It's like finding smoke without any fire. Where's the iron?
Okay, so that's one major chemical headache. What else?
Then there's the thermal contradiction. The object is clearly outgassing, releasing gas and dust like a comet does. We can see that.
Which usually means it's being heated up by the sun, right?
And
Makes sense.
It should. But the infrared observations looking at its heat signature show it's staying remarkably cold. Much colder than it should be, given how much material it's shedding and how close it got to the sun's radiation.
So it's acting like a comet, sweating off gas, but it's staying cold.
Yeah, it's I don't know, sweating profusely while sitting in a freezer. The amount of heat it seems to be absorbing and emitting just doesn't match the energy needed for that level of outgassing. Something's not right with the energy budget.
Okay, chemical weirdness, thermal weirdness. But the one that really gets me, statistically, is the trajectory. The 4.89-degree problem.
Ah, yes. This one is arguably the strongest statistical anomaly. It's fundamental. Interstellar objects, visitors from outside our solar system, should arrive from random directions, right? Statistically speaking.
Makes sense. Space is big, they could come from anywhere.
Right. And think about our solar system. The planets orbit roughly on a flat plane, the ecliptic. But the galaxy itself, the Milky Way disk, is tilted about 60 degrees relative to our little plane. So you'd expect objects from interstellar space to mostly come in at steep, random angles relative to our planetary orbits.
And the previous ones did. Oumuamua and Borisov.
Exactly. Oumuamua came in at a very random-looking 123 degrees. Borisov was at 44 degrees. Those inclinations look perfectly normal, statistically consistent with random arrival.
But 3I Atlas.
3I Atlas arrived at an inclination of just 4.89 degrees relative to our ecliptic plane.
4.89. That's almost perfectly aligned with the plane the planets orbit on.
It's incredibly low. It represents less than 1% of all the possible arrival angles. It came in almost completely flat relative to us.
Wow. So statistically, that's just highly unlikely to happen by chance.
Extremely unlikely. It's like throwing a dart across a continent and having it land almost perfectly level with the bullseye on the board. That kind of alignment screams non-random. It hints maybe at trajectory correction or even aiming.
Aiming. Okay. That's a heavy word. And if it was aimed, or at least its path isn't random, that takes us straight into section 3, the interception hypothesis, and the fact that we're potentially facing some kind of imminent danger.
Right, because now we have to consider a couple of other, let's say, highly suggestive data points in that context.
First up, that weird streak seen by the Perseverance rover on Mars, the one that looked like it was 50,000 kilometers long.
Yeah, that caused a stir. Now, Loeb actually addressed this pretty quickly and convincingly debunked the initial hype. He pointed out it was almost certainly just an artifact of how the image was taken.
A long exposure.
Exactly, a 10-minute exposure. So the streak wasn't the object itself being 50,000 kilometers long, but rather the path 3I Atlas traveled during those 10 minutes. Makes sense.
Okay, so that's explained that.
Mostly.
Yeah.
But Loeb added a crucial caveat. He said, if the image turned out to be a single short snapshot like less than 3.28 seconds exposure, then the brightness and length couldn't be 3I Atlas itself way out there. It would have to be something much, much closer to the rover camera.
And has NASA confirmed the exposure time, the metadata for that image?
Nope. Again, citing the shutdown. So that little bit of ambiguity, that what if, it just hangs there. The door isn't completely closed on something odd happening near Mars.
Okay. And then there's the connection that Loeb made, which is kind of mind-blowing, linking this object back nearly 50 years to the WOW signal.
Yeah, the famous unexplained radio signal detected back in 1977. Never repeated, never explained. Loeb did the math, tracing 3I Atlas's trajectory backward in time.
And what did he find?
He found that back in August 1977, when the WOW signal was detected, 3I Atlas's would have been located in the sky only about 9 degrees away from the direction that signal came from.
9 degrees. Is that close, cosmically speaking?
In the vastness of the sky, yes, that's a very small separation. He calculated the probability of a random interstellar object happening to be that close to the WOW signal's origin point at that specific time as only about 0.6%. Highly improbable alignment.
Wow. Okay, 0.6%. And what about the signal itself? Did it match what something like 3I T cells might produce?
Well, the power needed to transmit that signal across the likely distance, maybe 600 astronomical units back then, would be immense, somewhere between 0.5 gigawatt and 2 gigawatts.
That's like nuclear reactor levels of power, focused into a beam.
Pretty much. And interestingly, the signal showed a blue shift.
Meaning the source was moving towards us.
Right. Rapidly towards us, which perfectly fits the trajectory of 3I Atlas entering our solar system from that direction. It's all circumstantial, of course, but very, very suggestive.
So all this brings us right to the present moment. We're just days away now from October 29th and 30th. That's when 3I Atlas hits perihelion.
Its closest approach to the sun, and this is the critical point.
Like us.
Because we're going to be completely blind. As it swings around the sun, it'll be on the opposite side from Earth, hidden from view. We'll have zero visibility during what should be its moment of maximum stress and activity.
And Loeb's warning about this period is pretty stark.
It is. He said, look, if it's just a natural comet, the intense solar heat at perihelion should cause it to break apart, or at least shed a lot more material. We should see signs of fragmentation when it emerges.
But if it's not natural, if it's technological,
Then, he warns, it might use the sun's gravity for a slingshot maneuver. It could potentially even release probes that could then intercept Earth.
intercept Earth, that's
Yeah.
chilling. And he even mentioned the potential economic fallout, didn't he?
He did. He speculated that if 3IAS does perform some kind of obvious maneuver when it comes back into view, if it changes course towards Earth, the financial markets could crash almost instantly on that news.
It really puts things in perspective. Which maybe brings us to our next section, section 4. Looking at these wild possibilities, these anomalies, does it have to consider what we are capable of technologically? Does human progress give us any context here?
I think it absolutely does. While we're sitting here frustrated about the missing 3I Atlas data, human science in other areas is just leaping forward. It shows that the kinds of advanced concepts we're forced to speculate about for 3I Atlas, they aren't total fantasy. They're rooted in physics we're actively exploring.
Like in quantum computing, for instance.
Exactly. Just recently, Microsoft and atom computing managed to create and entangle 24 logical qubits. That's a huge step. Logical qubits mean they've built-in error correction, which is the key hurdle for making quantum computers actually practical and scalable. We're getting closer.
And what about energy? That gigawatt power level for the WOW signal sounded enormous.
It is enormous, but look at fusion energy research. The West Tokamak in France just set a new record. They held plasma stable at 50 million degrees Celsius for over 22 minutes.
22 minutes. That's way longer than before, right?
Much longer. It pushes controlled fusion closer to continuous operation, the kind you'd need for power generation, so generating huge amounts of focused energy. It's something we're actively working towards mastering. Makes a gigawatt transmitter seem less like magic and more like advanced engineering.
Even back on Mars itself, where we're missing the high-rise shots of ATLAS, Perseverance has been making other discoveries.
That's right. In a rock sample called Chawfalls, it found these interesting little leopard spots. Turned out to be specks rich in both iron phosphate and iron sulfide.
And that combination means something.
On Earth, that specific combo is often considered a potential biosignature. It's associated with microbial communities interacting with minerals. Finding it on Mars suggests maybe that Mars could have stayed habitable, at least for microbes, for longer than we previously thought.
So human science is pushing boundaries everywhere. While for this one specific, incredibly weird object, the shutters seem to have come down.
That's the paradox we're left with.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. We've got 3I Atlas. It arrived on a statistically baffling trajectory. It seems to have impossible chemistry, nickel without iron. It's outgassing like crazy, but staying cold.
Anomalies piled on anomalies.
And right when it's about to make its closest pass to the sun, the moment it might reveal its true nature, we have this coordinated silence from multiple space agencies around the world.
Which forces everyone into speculation. You start hearing these really exotic explanations, like that idea from the 4chan leak again. The cue ball.
Right. Explain that briefly. What's a cue ball?
It's a purely theoretical concept, a type of hypothetical, stable, non-dispersing lump of exotic matter. Some theories suggest it could absorb energy, like solar radiation, without heating up normally, and maybe decay in ways that could release specific elements, perhaps explaining the nickel-iron thing or the cold outgassing. It's deep physics theory, but it's an attempt to explain the seemingly impossible.
It shows how far scientists are having to reach to even theorize about what this thing could be, assuming it's not just a very, very weird comet.
Exactly. And Avi Loeb himself put a number on it, didn't he, with his Loeb scale for ranking potential artificial origins?
Yeah, he said he wouldn't rank 3I Atlas any lower than a 2, which means, basically, probably natural, but with enough weirdness that it demands serious investigation. He's not dismissing it.
Which I think brings us to the real takeaway here. For you listening. Whether 3I Atlas turns out to be natural or not, whether these anomalies are real or just misinterpretations of limited data, the response to it has been incredibly revealing.
How so?
This whole episode, the coordinated silence, the quick debunking of amateurs, the reliance on the shutdown excuse, it's highlighted a massive crisis of trust, hasn't it?
Yeah, it feels like it's exposed this default assumption many people have, that we probably wouldn't be told the straight truth if something truly paradigm-shifting was discovered, especially if it was potentially threatening.
We're primed for suspicion when the stakes feel this high. Do you trust the institutions to be fully transparent about something like this? This event suggests many people don't.
So we're just waiting, flying blind as it goes around the sun, hoping it's just a weird comet that maybe breaks up.
Or bracing for the possibility that when it reappears in early November, it does something completely unexpected. The mystery right now might be less about 3I Alice itself and more about how we, as a civilization, handle this level of profound uncertainty when the data we need is deliberately kept from us.
A lot to think about there. We'll definitely be keeping a close eye on this as it unfolds. That's certainly something for you to mull over until next time on The Deep Dive.